Hello and welcome to Rewildology, the show that explores conservation, travel, and rewilding the planet. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell, conservation biologist and adventure traveler. Since you're listening to this show, I can make a pretty educated guess that you try to choose sustainable options whenever possible. But I bet you've experienced, as I have on countless occasions, that the most sustainable options are out of reach due to high prices or lack of availability. Let's take shoes, for example. We all need shoes, and I personally require durable shoes that can withstand my outdoor lifestyle. When my hiking boots fell apart very recently, I had to drop a pretty penny to replace my worn out shoes, and I know for a fact that I didn't select the most sustainable option because I couldn't justify dishing out an extra $50 to $100 on top of the already expensive price tag. Additionally, the quote unquote green boots didn't seem to offer me any additional value other than feeling good for purchasing a pair of sustainable boots. So, is it possible to make shoes that are fashionable, affordable, and truly sustainable? Every once in a while, we meet innovators that are disrupting industries and challenging the status quo. Today's guest not only designs fashionable outdoor shoes, but he's also created a brand whose core value is doing the right thing for the planet and for communities of all income levels. Today, I'm sitting down with Rommel Vega, CEO of HOLO Footwear. Rommel was born in Nicaragua and immigrated to the United States as a young child, growing up in the vibrant city of Miami, Florida. Rommel knew from an early age that he wanted to work in design and spent his high school and college years studying the field. Through a series of internships, he discovered that he wanted to create shoes, which combined his passion for design and sports. He climbed the ladder at several well-known shoe brands, but he knew he reached the limit of his impact and decided to co-found HOLO Footwear, an affordable, sustainable shoe brand. Rommel and I have such a fun time sharing our love of wine, his journey through design, and when he decided to become a fashion shoe designer, his career at top shoe companies like Puma, Merrell, and Keen, why he and other visionaries decided to strike out on their own and create HOLO Footwear, how shoes are made, what makes HOLO's shoes truly sustainable, the struggles of launching a startup, and his hopes for the future. All right, everyone, please enjoy this conversation with Rommel.
Yeah,
All right. Oh, what are you drinking? What is that?
it's a Pinot Noir from Oregon. It's a Willamette Valley. I'm a big Pinot Noir fan.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's just nice. It's like smooth and just like nice to just have conversations. And I don't know. I pretty much only drink wine, which is really funny because I
I
got
love
into it
wine.
when I moved to Oregon. They grow some of the nicest Pinots.
I love where we were going with the wine. So
Yeah,
so you
so
got into
the
wine when you moved to Oregon?
I got into wine when I moved to Oregon. How could you not? Like they grow incredible Pinots, but I'm not like it's interesting, right? Because I got into it like just like a normal non-wine expert that we all are really. The vineyards are down the street, right? They're not too far from where I live. And the beauty of that is like I can just I was like go to the source and get the wine and taste it. And it's cool. You got everything from like Soccer Blossom, which is a really cool vineyard that does all
Oh,
sustainable growth. You have like, Bergstrom Winery that they do again sustainable growing. Their sheep's come and grace the land and like prep the soil and then they plant it's just a whole process and it's all done sustainably. They reuse all their water. And so I got into it and I realized there's a clear difference between like drinking something that's made like last month or this last harvest to drinking something that's been bottled and like maybe shipped and kept somewhere in a warehouse, potentially maybe not kept in like the right temperature. And so I started
right.
really getting into it. I got really, really into it. And now it's all I drink pretty much. I'll have, whiskey and stuff once in a while, but I think my wife wishes that I would drink more tequila, obviously being from Mexico and all, but it is smooth. It's good. It's you drink it and it's good for your soul. There's a reason why a lot of Europeans I think drink it. They must have known something that we didn't know here in the New World for a while.
Right.
But I love it. I do love drinking wine. So yeah.
I've totally gotten into wine as well. Because
Yeah.
me being raised where I was raised just north of the Bourbon Trail. And so, not that there was whiskey in my bottle, but I would not be surprised if there was. So, drinking whiskey forever. And then I finally became an adult, and I'm like, I should probably just kind of stop this copious amounts of Jack Daniels. And that is when I really started to get into wines. And like you have, you know, Pinot Noir. I've really gotten to Pinot Grigios. I love dry Rieslings. I think those are really tasty. I kind of have to stay away from reds because I'm prone to migraines.
Oh, okay.
But not that they don't taste good. It's just tannins. I just got to kind of be I gotta be
a little careful with. Yeah, I mean, if it's in the bottle and it's in the glass, I love. Yeah, I'm like Chardonnays. It's funny. Like I also live in Michigan half the time, and they grow some of the most beautiful Rieslings you can find in the world because of the climate, obviously. So I've been really getting into that lately. It's just fun. It's a cool. I don't know. I think like art, design, music, and booze just kind of all sort of, but you know, responsibly, obviously, and it's an appreciation thing. I think more than anything, I do appreciate the process that goes into making, and winemaking is a process, and it's like, it takes time. Like everything in life, nothing's going to happen overnight. Something really good, it's had to go through a lot of processes. Like, you know, it's like kind of like this whole thing I'm doing. It's like, it's funny. I think about it often because it's like you have to grow out of this hole. You put a seed and then you open a hole and like you put a seed and you get in there and like then the seed goes into a plant and then it gives you fruit. But you're literally digging yourself out of a hole every time you start a startup, because that's what they call it, seed funding, seed rounds. It's like you are digging yourself out of a hole that you made for yourself.
Yes. Oh my God. I think I just felt that in my soul. That is so right.
Yeah. It's
well,
true.
I think that this is perfect. Like you're really starting to lay the groundwork. Literally, we're digging holes right now of your entire life and your entire trajectory and what you've dedicated your life to. But let's maybe go back way in time. Tell me about Rommel as a young child, and when in your journey or your time did you realize that you wanted to be a designer? Of all the things you could have done, you decided to be creative and go into design. So tell me about that. How did that happen?
It's interesting, you know. So I'm definitely a child of immigrants. My parents came here from Central America, from Nicaragua, all places. And, you know, when you grew up in the third, so I was born in Nicaragua, and, you know, I think it's the second poorest country in the northern hemisphere next to Haiti, if I'm correct. So my parents came here, you know, and then, you know, they got status and then they brought us over, my brother, my sister, and I moved to, like, I think out of all places in the world, like I moved to like Miami, right? Which is like, think about Miami in like complete city built on, you know, Art Nouveau, 1920s, beautiful architecture, colorful buildings. You got your pinks, your blues, like there's so much great energy. So you can't help but to, when you grow up in a city like Miami as a child, and I moved there when I was 2.5. So I went to a high school called Dash. And this high school takes kids from all over Miami, right? It doesn't really matter. Like if you live in South Miami, it tends to be like the more bougie people that have more money. If you grow up in like Alapata, or if you live in Liberty City, like, you know, you grow up in the less sort of privileged areas of Miami. And like I grew up in a trailer park, right? And so it was interesting that I applied for the school. You have to apply to kind of go on to college. So you apply to get into the school, and you go on a Saturday and you submit a portfolio, and then you know they pick, I think it's like, I don't know, 100 kids out of the entire county. But the way they have to do it, everyone gets to go just based on talent, not necessarily based on where your background is. So I got in, and then from that school, obviously now you're going to school with just a bunch of creatives. So my high school didn't have a football team. We didn't have any sports. There was no Friday Night Lights. There was no like, we had a prom, but I think they felt bad for us. Just our kids needed something to do. But it was like doing art all the time. You know, we have math, we have science, we have geometry, but I did a lot of art. So I had like architecture classes. I had graphic design. Back in that time, the school was sponsored by Apple. So we were like testing out some of the new Mac products that Jobs was working on. So it was kind of a cool little incubator, I would say, of people who are just creatives. And so from that high school, I knew right away, I think middle school especially, I knew that I wanted to do something with art. Maybe not industrial design based, but just art. And so when you go to that school, you get to pick your lane, right? Okay, you can do fashion design. And the kids who do fashion design end up going to a school called FIT, which is pretty famous out of New York, Fashion Institute of Technology. If you do architecture, you go to Cooper Union, which is another really great college in New York. If you do industrial design, you either go to Detroit, you go to San Francisco. And so I got into industrial design, which is really anything you touch, like your microphone, like your glasses, your phone, like your computer. Someone has to design it, right? Someone's got to like touch it and design it. So I got into that, and then I applied for school in Detroit. And I think 8 of my friends from high school all went to school in Detroit to that same school. Again, it's a college that has no sports teams. It has no like Saturday games. Your teachers are all in the automotive industry, so they're all like really hard on you as far as designing. And then every semester, every summer, you get an internship, or every semester you can get an internship. And some of the internships were like at Apple, they were at Nike, they were at Converse, they were at Adidas, they were at Ford, they were at GM. So you're like this. No, you're making a decision like what the rest of my life is going to look like, because you have to go into, whether it's design or whatever it is. So I was able to figure out early on, I think high school especially, that I love art, I love painting, and I was going to use that to somehow monetize and provide for myself, because I know that the whole starving artist thing is very real. So I wanted to pick a career that you were innovative, you're changing, you're like designing, you're creating, constantly creating stuff. And that led me to that school in Detroit. And then I had and I always talk about all my friends had internships at like Ford and Chrysler and Nike. And I ended up getting at a place called Moen, and they're in North Olmsted, Ohio, and they design faucets. And so when I came back to school, all my friends were like, yeah, I hung out at the campus in Portland, and I was at Nike, and I was like, what'd you do this time? I was like, yeah, I hung out in North Olmsted, Ohio, and I designed faucets for Moen. You've signed them Home Depot or whatever. But it was cool because I had to learn a lot of problem solving. But then that also helped me understand that I wanted to be in the fashion space. And so I knew that I did not want to design faucets. I did not want to design laptops. I did not want to design phones. I knew that I was going to be somehow in the fashion space. And I love sports. There's this connectivity between fashion and sport. And what better than sneakers? You hear about a lot of athletes love, fashion, and their sneakers is a big statement piece. And then my friends in that school graduated, and they went to work at Puma, and they went to work at Nike, and they went to work at Adidas. And I ended up working at Fossil out of college, designing women's watches out of all things. I did that for a year. And then after that, I got my big break in the industry, and I got a job at Puma designing running shoes. And I never looked back. I've only not done shoes 1 year out of my life, I think. And then I've only ever designed shoes since.
Wow. Did you predict that when you were young?
No,
did you see that is where I was going to go, or?
I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It's funny. I was talking to my wife about it yesterday, because I just turned 40 yesterday, so it's my birthday.
Oh my gosh! Happy birthday!
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot. We were just talking about it. I was just like, if you would have told me when I was a kid in Nicaragua, or when I grew up in Miami, that I was going to go work for all these companies and going to have somewhat of success of some capacity, and then that I would eventually start this company, and then that has some success of that some capacity. I don't know that, that I would have thought that this was all going to happen. But I'm also a believer. I was watching the movie the other day, and there was a quote that he says, I'm going to do what I have to do until I can do what I want to do. And so a part of that is I did everything I had to do. I moved from Miami, I left my parents behind, my family. I moved from city to city, state to state. You have to sacrifice a lot, but at the same time, it really sets you up for whatever your definition of success is, because my definition of success might be different than somebody listening to this podcast. And so therefore, I think sometimes people try to define other people's success based on their own success. My journey is different than everybody else's journey. And so it's about, if you are where you're supposed to be, and if you really believe that, that's success on its own,
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to sit down with you and everybody on the show, is because we have such different journeys and our stories are so different. And what is our passion and what's driving us couldn't be more different. And hearing so many stories about that, I feel can really change the world. And so that is why I was so excited to sit down with you. And because you are taking a very different journey, and it's really interesting, like Puma. So it sounds like I bet at the moment you might have felt like, oh my God, I have freaking made it. I'm at goddamn Puma. Everybody, I am the coolest guy right now. So let's talk a little bit more about that at Puma. So what did you learn? Was this like your big first stepping stone into becoming like a shoe designer? And like,
Yeah.
how long were you there? What did you do?
It was cool. Like I moved because I was living in Texas working for Fossil, and you know, real story, like I wanted to be in shoe design so bad that I ended up taking a part-time job at the Puma store in Richardson, Texas, which is like an outlet mall. And I remember telling my boss at Fossil, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go work at Puma someday. So like, and I'm gonna go take this part-time job because I'm applying for a job. And she's like, well, yeah, all you designers want to be shoe designers. I'm like, no, but for real, I'm being serious. Anyway, long story short, I applied for a job at Puma in Boston, went for the interview, they gave me the job, came back, and I quit my job at the Puma store where I was not only sweeping floors after I had a corporate job designing watches, I was like putting shoes on the shelf to later go work at the corporate headquarters in Boston, and not only just work there, but work for the international category that you have colleagues in like Tokyo and in London and like Berlin. And so being able to also travel to all those places, but the humbling experience of working at the actual outlet store, when I got there, it's funny because the director was like, look, you're already plugged into the HR system because you would have this part-time job. So it's literally just a matter of when do you want to start. And so,
Nice.
yeah. And so I ended up sending my manager at that time an email from Rommel Vega at Puma.com. And I was like, hey, I'm not coming to work this week because I'm working at the headquarters in Boston. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, you feel like you've made it, like you feel like you feel it felt like this sort of everything I've been working for when I got to Puma. But then you realize you just start from the bottom again, like everyone above you is this badass designer who either worked at Nike or Adidas and they've been doing it for 15, 16 years and they're like directors and they work with athletes and you're just like this kid out of college 2 years in and you're like, okay, cool, I'm here now. And it's like, great, just do color for the first year. You're not designing anything until you understand the shoemaking process. And then on top of that, they send you to like Vietnam, right? Where I want to spend time at the factories. So I'm spending time at the factories in Vietnam. I'm understanding how shoes are made before I can even actually draw a pair of shoes. And then I remember my first pair of shoes was a pair of running shoes. But I was doing a lot of lifestyle stuff for a while. I was doing a lot of colors. I was doing a lot of materials. I was really learning that part of the creation process. And then the running design director came up to me. He's like, hey, like, who are we kidding? He's like, you have a design background. You obviously want to design shoes. So like, let's get you in the running category where I need a designer. And then you can start doing color and then you can give you a shot at designing shoes. And so, he went on to work for other companies, but he kind of really set me up to learn the process. And I remember designing my first running shoes that was going to be sold at Foot Locker. And, you're super naive. You're just like, you're thinking it's like a drawing contest. You want to make the prettiest drawing, but it's really technical designing a pair of shoes. You have to really understand a lot of molding and how that stuff gets made. But Puma was, I said, one of the greatest experience for me because I got to travel all over the world. And it was learning to work with people from all different places, made some incredible relationships in places like Vietnam, China, Germany, people that I still talk to in the industry who are now seeing what I'm doing. They're like, man, people talk about doing your own thing, but you're doing it, and so it was an incredible humbling experience to say you've made it, but to where you've made it to the bottom of the top, which is a lot different than saying you made it to the top of the top, which I don't know that anyone ever does, just depending on what your definition of the top means. And that was a cool experience. I got to work with athletes. That time there were the Olympics happening, and I think it was in Germany. There were the World Running Olympics, so got to see some cool product get made. Like Usain Bolt shoes were being made. He's like the fastest man on earth. So I was in the running category, so just kind of seeing that thing come to life was really cool. Then there was a lot of projects with like Alexander McQueen, and that was really fun. But I was at the bottom of the top. Like I was just trying to get my hands on anything I could possibly get. So that was a cool experience.
And I would like to take this deeper for a second. And if you wouldn't mind, as somebody who has never designed a product, I've never put a product together, everything I do is very nature based. And I happen to appreciate very well made shoes, especially for what I do. I'm super athletic. I have all different kinds of workouts I do. I put my shoes through a lot. I hike in insane terrain. I travel the world. I put shoes through a shit ton of stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know how they actually come to be. So could you maybe give me like a shoemaking 101? Like, how does this actually work?
Yeah. I think like the way that I've seen it work or the way that I've done it, it really starts with, storytelling is really important, right? Like something, yes, you eventually get somewhere physical and tangible, but the storytelling part is why are you doing this? Like, and that's something that I learned early on in my career. Like, why does this shoe have to exist? Like, why do people need this? So once you define that, it's going to make you faster, stronger. It's going to be lightweight. So when you start building all of these parameters, that is usually done by a merchandiser who's a person on the team. They look at the business needs and sort of the brand needs, right? And so they build this called a brief, which sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. But you build a brief, and the brief tells you, like, we really want, for example, like she's looking for a shoe that's lightweight, that's fast, that's it's got X amount of millimeter drops, and so you start defining it, and then you go and draw it. You have to start sketching it, and then once you sketch it and you find like you have design reviews. Once you have the actual design idea on paper, like a sketch, like a paper, and I still sketch by hand. Really, I don't really like sketching on the computer much. Then you gotta like do a tech pack. So a tech pack is a technical drawing of what you're sending to the factories so they can make it. And this is like no color, it's just lines. So if you're a creative person, think about, we live in a space of color and we live shapes and color, right? So just to do something like an architect, like if I wanted to be an architect, I could have been an architect, but I think the architect is too flat. It's like 2-dimensional, where shoes are 3-dimensional, faster than a building is, right? So you have to almost take an approach where you're doing a draft drawing for the factories. And so you like for example, like your outsole, you have to design it, and then you have to do all the cross sections in your head that don't exist, so the people at the factories can follow it, make a 3D model of it based on cross sections all through the shoe. So you're splitting this thing in your head 10, 20 different ways, and you're drawing all of this cross section for something that doesn't physically exist yet. So they can go and make it. And so then they make you a sample, and then you start working in 3-dimensional form. And then the shoe kind of takes life. But from paper to actual sample, a lot of it has to do with really understanding cross sections, and engineering is a big part of it. I don't think people understand the work that goes into actually getting a shoe to come to life. But it's about a 3-month process from ideation to getting a sample made. It's about a 90-day lead time to just getting salesman sample. And it's about 2 years out. So we work about 2 years out on a lot of our stuff. But a lot of it happens in your brain. Like,
Wow.
You're spinning this thing in 3D in your brain, and you're like trying to figure out the materials, the cross sections, how's it going to fit? How's it all really going to come together? Because they have to make molds for the outsoles. And when they make those molds, they're all based on your, cross sections. It's still done that way to this day. You can have all the 3D programs you want, but those 3D programs still generate cross sections that ultimately get sent to a mold shop. And then the mold shop makes the outsole, and then the pattern cutter, like, he makes the pattern, which means like you have to take something that's 3-dimensional in your head and lay it out flat and see butterfly that upper and see how it's going to really come together. So yeah, it's a lot of, I think, really envisioning what it looks like before you even see it.
Holy crap. I mean, I assume there was a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Again, because it's just like so far from my day to day, which is why I wanted to ask. Like, I love asking these kind of questions. Like, what does it actually take? We all wear shoes. Like, we all wear shoes. And it's something that I think that we almost take for granted, but somebody like you has dedicated your life to creating sustainable shoes. So what does that mean? How does it even come to be? And like, I don't know, like 2 years from like ideation to a physical product that's on a store shelf. That is incredible. Wow.
2 years.
I had no clue.
Yeah. 2 years. And you could work on something that gets dropped before it even goes on sale. So you could spend as a designer 2 years, and the business people can decide, we don't need that right now. It doesn't hit our margins, or, the color doesn't work for our retail partners. And so like you just spent 2 years working on something that never sees the light of day. So those days are tough, I think, if you're a creative person. But, for the most part, most of the good stuff makes it, but some of the really, really good stuff is on the verge of getting cut constantly. So there's this sort of tug and pull tension between you and merchandisers and sales. As a creative person, you got to sell them on it, so then they can go and sell it to the retail partners. And if you don't get enough placement of the product, then they just end up dropping it. So you're selling the vision of something that, people like to live in the now, which is what's selling today. I don't really care about what's going to sell in spring 2024, but but I just designed this in like spring 2021. Like this. So we think it's going to be like this, We think it's going to go here, but you never know. You never know.
Holy crap. Okay. That is
Yeah.
insanely helpful. So this is what you did at Puma. And then I think this is also a good transition as well. You obviously you're not at Puma anymore,
Yeah.
because this whole conversation today wouldn't happen. So that's obviously
Yeah.
leading
Yeah.
up to
Yeah.
that. But so is that what you did at Puma? And then maybe what happened after Puma? Why did you leave there?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think change is good. There was changing leadership. Like my director had left because he was gonna go launch a footwear brand for a small company called Under Armour at that time. They didn't have a footwear category. So he was picked to sort of go put that together. And then we had new leadership, things changed, and I really want to live in the West Coast. So I ended up moving down to California where I have a job opportunity to work for DC Shoes, which was owned by Quicksilver at that time. And that was cool because I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go work with like skaters, right? Totally different than I was doing because I was working with athletes and they're athletes in their own right. But it was like Rob Dyrdek, when he was like really popular back in the day, which super dates me, but he would come to the office and I was like, Southern California sounds cool. I've always wanted to live in California. It could be like a cool experience, So I went and I interviewed and I got the job. And then I left Puma and moved out to California to SoCal. I lived in Huntington Beach for a while. And that was cool because I went from working with like what I think is a really buttoned up suit, which is I think Puma's a brand that is extremely buttoned up, established. They have processes and everything was just like put together because they're a global brand and they're the third biggest footwear company in the world. To work for kind of like a smaller company like DC Shoes that was financially backed by Quicksilver. And there was like, so you have some designers, and you have some like skaters that became designers. And so it was like, they were like, bring you a Chuck Taylor and they'd be like, I want this. And I'm like, yeah, well, you can't have that because Converse already owns that. So like,
Yeah.
so we can do something like it. So yeah, everybody, it's funny because with the whole Instagram thing, it's like everyone's a designer these days. Like, everyone just,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But it was funny, worked with some pretty cool skaters that, they came into the studio. And so I was working with, at that time, he was really young, like Najee Houston came to the office. So I got to see him when he was like super young, just like really young trying to break into the skate scene. Travis Pastrana was another guy that I worked on some stuff with. And Ken Block, I think, recently passed away. My manager, he was designing all of the Ken Block stuff. So he would tell me stories about going to Utah, hanging out with Ken Block. So that was cool. It was a cool time. I don't know that, DC at that time was like cranking as a shoe brand. They're like pretty big at Journeys. But I got to meet some really cool people who I still stay in touch with. And so that was a different experience. I felt like if I would have had DC before Puma, like I feel like I would have gone there with like, well, I just got away. I just left Puma to come here. And they're like, dude, chill. This is just SoCal. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously. So yeah, it was a different transition. And then, it was cool. I love California. I love the ocean, so I love Cali. Then I moved from California to Oregon, where I think like my career really blossomed, where I think took a step into like more leadership role. I became like a senior designer. I went to work for Columbia Sportswear, and then worked on a lot of their footwear. They own Merrell and they own a few other brands. So I was able to dabble a little bit in a few different sort of categories. And then I became a design director right after that. I worked at Columbia for a while. Columbia was a big part of my career. I think I spent like about 8 years there. And I met some really cool people. I think it's hard to work for a brand that doesn't have, say, footwear wise, they have incredible brand equity when it comes to outerwear, but footwear, they're not really established in footwear, say like Puma was, right? So to get somebody to buy a pair of Columbia shoes over like a Nike or Adidas, like that should better be good. It better be very good, right? Because they're not about brand. People like brands. So that was a cool experience. That was a really cool experience. I really enjoyed my time there. I spent a lot of time in China. I would go to China. I would fly there, come back, spend a week at home, pick up my dog from daycare, put him back in, head back to China. Spent time in Zhuhai, which is a cool little town between Hong Kong and Macau. Met a lot of really, really incredible people. And then again, leadership change. I spent a lot of time there already. And like everything else, you like, well, it's time for me to be a director somewhere. And then I went to be a design director for Keen. Keen is also in Portland. So Keen Footwear. So I was heading up their lifestyle division. I met some friends there. And that was a short time because if you're in the outdoor industry, you want to work for the biggest outdoor brand in footwear, which is technically considered, it's really Merrell, like that's the big one. everybody wears Merrell. And so they came knocking and they offered me the global lifestyle design director. And so I ended up picking up my bags and I moved to Michigan. Talk about full circle. I went to school in Detroit.
Yeah.
I went to travel all over the world, came back to Michigan, and I was a design director for Merrell for a while. And I would travel a lot. That was a different experience as well, because that's more of an established brand. They have a lot of equity in what they do and what they do really well. So kind of like pushing a brand like that to do new things, it's a little more difficult, I want to say, than to say a brand that's real innocent and just trying to find its way in the marketplace. So they're good at what they do. That same good at what they do, it's also what kind of holds brands back, I personally think, because they obviously want to keep making a lot of money, and that's what they're good at. But new brands started emerging, new things started happening, COVID hit, and then that's how I started HOLO Footwear. It started from the bottom, now we're here, I like to say. One of those journeys that I think I worked a lot of places, but I always had in the back of my mind that I was going to eventually someday own my own brand. And a lot of the things that I did to get me to where I needed to be was really thankful for the experiences. I learned a lot from a ton of people, and you'd be surprised what goes into just making decisions on businesses. And now that I'm in the position of owning a business, I understand some of those decision makings that I didn't perhaps understand as just a designer on the team. I was like, what do you mean we can't do this? It's just cool. Like, just make it just cool. What are you talking about? So I have a lot of respect. I think obviously now, I know now what I didn't know then. But yeah, this is how HOLO Footwear got started. We're a COVID company, we're a COVID startup, which, I think it's a perfect time to start a company. When the world shut down, you have nothing to do. So you're just thinking of what to do. And, I think that was a really good time for everyone to sort of recalibrate. And for me, it was like, I don't want to go work for anybody anymore. I'm tired of doing that. I want to make a difference and use my talent for the greater good, and I wasn't going to do that if I just went to get another design job. It just wasn't going to happen. There's not another shoe that I'm going to design, that it's going to make a difference. I really had to put myself in the driver's seat and have a startup and find a way to fund it and find a way to, get it into retail. And all of those challenges were just cool. They were different, but I'm also a person who loves to constantly learn. So I've been learning a lot the last 3 years.
I bet you have.
Yeah. Here we are.
And I'm really thankful that you just took us through your entire journey, because I feel like each of those places that you were at have definitely influenced, having looked at your shoes now. And what we're going to dive into next is, I'm sure that most of the people listening have heard those outwear shoe brands, and most of us have probably bought several pair from them. Heck, you might even design some of my shoes now that I know when you were there. It's very possible, because I've had Merrells, I've had Serrals, I've had Keens, I've had all of those brands, and some other ones I've had as well that are all they're big players in the outdoor shoe space. Yeah. And that is now what you will have. That's what HOLO is. But you started to talk about it a little bit, and I want to get more into your why for a second. Mm-hmm. So one, starting your own business is super, super scary. It just is. I mean, this show is a COVID baby as well. Yeah, I had the idea of COVID, watching a documentary, bawled my eyes out. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And spread voices. That is what I need to do. But a lot of people say it, but they don't necessarily do it. Yeah. So why did you feel it was part of your mission to launch a sustainable shoe brand? You could have become the, sustainability director or a sustainability director for another shoe brand that would have gladly hired you to essentially build their sustainable shoe line. But you decided that you needed to go do your own thing. So what void did you see in the sustainable outdoor shoe world that you felt that you could fill that you wouldn't be able to fill in a bigger company?
Yeah, it definitely is a passion, right? I think when you do this, you're following your passion. I think that's first and foremost. When the whole idea came up, I was simply going to start a shoe company, right? The beginning wasn't I want to start a sustainable company. The beginning was I want to start a shoe company that's affordable, that looks really good. And then, it's interesting. My wife now, who was my girlfriend at that time, she's much, much smarter than I am. She was like, well, if you're going to start a company, like, you got to make it sustainable. I was like, you know what? I think you're onto something, right? And so we got into this path, and I'm like, what is sustainability? Like, what is, like, what is it exactly? And like, I'm a think very different mindset of what something is sustainable, right? Because that word gets thrown around like, oh my God, everyone does it, right? And so I'm just sitting here like, look, I've been to China, like I know how shoes are made, like I know how materials actually sourced. Like so there was a point in time when I was driving back and forth from Michigan to Oregon during that pandemic because she lived in Michigan. I still have a place in Oregon. And I was stopping like places like Iowa. I was stopping places like, Montana. Like I was stopping places like Wyoming, which if you've ever been, is a vast piece of land. All you do is think and drive, like windshield time. And like I took a flight once from Portland to Michigan, and I was reading a magazine, and it was talking about a certain brand. And I'll be honest, it just rubbed me the wrong way, in a weird way, because I've been doing footwear for so long that it's like the Silicon Valley, uniform and the coolest thing in town, the coolest shoes, and they're made sustainably. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh my gosh, like where's the added value for the customer, right? I was thinking to myself, like, where is the added value there? Like, because somebody who's influential wears a pair of shoes that it's made responsibly, claim to be a brand or any brand really that like, oh, we can measure CO2, and I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. There's no way in hell you can measure a CO2 of a shoe. There's just no way. And I've been doing this for a long time. And so I set out to create a brand that was just like honest, like down and dirty, like super raw, just like real honest in the way we make our brand, our product and our brand. Like we don't have any certifications, like, because like, why do you need certification? You're like an adult. Like you should just do the right thing. Like who made certain people that certify other brands, like the police of sustainability, first of all? Like they're all making money. They are all making money. Every time you see that label on something, they get paid, right? And so I refuse to do that because I know how product is made. And so we set out to create this real honest company that is not going to upcharge something because it's made responsibly. We're not going to upcharge our customer, and our consumer is not going to have to pay and overpay for product, which for a fact, I know how much it costs to make because I've been where it's made. And I spent a lot of time where it's made. I understand materials. I know how it's made. And so they're charging for brand, and they're charging for, certain things that it just like really rubbed me the wrong way. And so I set out to be a disruptor. I was like, I'm going to disrupt this nonsense. What it is just nonsense that the consumer has to overpay for something that is doing the right thing, right? So it's like, I don't know, I'm a big fan of Spike Lee, so like, do the right thing. Like if I have that shirt on right now, I would do the right thing, right? But it's like, you start become disruptive. You're like, you know what, I'm going to create a product that looks really good. That's everybody on the team has worked at a bunch of different companies, so we all really know the system, how it works. So we're kind of like their biggest nightmare, because now we went and created this brand on the ethos that sustainability should be for all. You got to democratize it. It should be for people who are for lower incomes. It should be for people higher income. It should be for people who live in Wyoming, not just like San Francisco and not just New York. It has to be for everyone for us to really make a difference in recycling trash. I mean, if only the cool kids in school are wearing, and that's 2 out of 10, like they're not really making a difference. And if you really cared about people and sustainability, do you make it affordable to everybody? Like that's our challenge, not only to the industry, but that's our challenge to ourselves as a brand. It's like, let's take the talent and the knowledge that we've gained and really flip this industry on its head. And then on top of that, we can say, and I dare anybody to, tell us that we don't know what we're talking about, because they can't disvalue your opinion because you've done it. And so we're being disruptive in a cool way, and we're finding really cool partnership. And like I said, we don't play the certification thing. We don't have the cool stickers on our window in our office, on our boxes. Like I'm sorry, I'm not gonna play that game. That's nonsense. Like, we are doing the best we can to make the best footwear made in the best possible way, responsibly. That means, not overcharging the consumer for something. And the beauty is, then you start selling shoes at like Nordstrom's and REI, and like it validates you. It's super funny. It's super cool. Like, I love to see my $65 pair of shoes that's made in the same factory as everyone else, really, sit next to like the $200 pair of shoes, and it's like it's just great, and people are buying it, and it's fun, and it's a serious business, but it's really more of a like, wait a minute, like, we got to change this narrative that like sustainability is just for like the cool kids and this and that. Like, no, 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 no. It has to be for everyone, and everyone has to participate, simply because everyone should have the right to participate in making and buying responsible stuff. The more people can participate in it, and you can talk about brand and brand direction. But if you really want to make a difference, like, don't price them out, price them in, allow them to participate with their wallets, which I think some of them can't because it's too expensive. And so they'll never be able to participate in making a difference because they get priced out.
Absolutely. And I mean, from personal experience, like everything I do is on passion. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, in this world of what I do, passion doesn't necessarily pay you that much.
yeah,
And so I know so many people that are fully dedicated to living in a sustainable way, but they can't afford to. And it's
yeah,
not because they don't want to. And so then you like run into this like a constant guilt factor. And I've been susceptible to this myself all the time. It's like, I want to do the right thing. I want to buy the electric car. I want to buy all the whatever, the most sustainable clothing brands. I hate fast fashion.
yeah,
But at the same time, if I can't afford to do that because I have student loans, I have a
yep,
car payment, I have life, and most of any extra money I have actually goes to this show. So, like, I can't necessarily afford to buy the most sustainable thing. And this is what I do. Like, and I try my hardest. And so, what about people that are, like a single mother that has three
yeah,
children? Is she going to be able to afford the most sustainable options? Probably not,
probably
because
not.
the most accessible option is usually pretty bad for the planet. And
Yeah,
then there's this constant like guilt factor, but you can't blame somebody who can't afford the more sustainable option. So it has, there's almost like an elitist factor to it, to a lot of sustainable stuff.
yeah,
I, and I see it and I feel it personally all the time.
yeah,
Like I could probably change my career right now and go
yeah,
make twice what I'm making, but I wouldn't be fulfilling my passion at all. But then I
right.
could afford the sustainable stuff. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
ah.
And that goes for everything. That goes for food. Like, you think about these
Yes.
companies that care about like food and what people eat. Like, I would say, like, all I see in the hood is like fast food restaurants. I don't see like the fancy food places. Where are my Whole Foods at? Like, where's my New Seasons? Why are you not in Liberty City? Like, why are you not in these places? Right? Like, why are we disenfranchising these people? Like, why? But I mean, I know why. I mean, there's like margins and return on revenue for a lot of this people, but the tide is changing. I think it's changing because our generation, I think, and the creative people out there are saying, like, or people who have an opportunity to make a difference are saying, like, I'm not gonna go sit at the chair and just make you a shoe that you're gonna sell, 300,000 pairs of one style that I designed, and you're gonna make 80% margin on it. Like, no, enough of that. I'm gonna go try to do something that everybody can play, and it's some capacity fair, and like, I don't think you have to get it right. I think you just have to try to get it right. And I think that's where people go wrong. So you could be, we're a brand that makes footwear that happen to be sustainable. Like, we're not just a sustainable brand. I mean, it's it's a very different. There's brands that all they talk about is their sustainability and their like CO2 emission. But it's like, but what about the product? I'm buying a pair of shoes here. Like, talk to me about, and they do that because their product is like amateur hour. It's like, it's not
Right.
good. It's ugly, or it's poorly made, or all they are hanging on is their $3 million worth of marketing spent that they just spent because the product has no substance. But we're a brand that the product has substance, and the product looks good, and it's an affordable price point. So that's a little different because it's made by product people. So we don't have to convince the consumer and constantly be like on them to be able to buy into our brand, because we know that when the fluff is gone, like the product's got to be good if you're going to get that return consumer. And so for us, it's been really focused on product, making it real responsible, making sure that we're doing the best we can and not really falling into the trap of like being certified by anybody. Like, who cares? I mean, for us, I don't really care. And we've been able to partner with the right people that really understand what we're trying to do. Because if I have to pay for a certification, if we have to pay for certification, like what, Brooke, like, what are we doing? It's like, so we're paying certification. So we're doing the right thing. And like, I don't know, I come from a household, it's like, man, just do the right thing, be a responsible adult. Like nobody has to hold your hand to the fire. And then I think we all win and we win better. And so I think people are I personally think, they're kind of getting over that we need certain people to give you the green light. It's like, no, I'm not playing that game. And they can't discredit us because we've been doing this. I can guarantee you that the people that certify product haven't spent enough time in China. I got more China visas than they do. So like, they're not going to tell me how something sustainably, like that doesn't work. I always joke that when shoes are made in China, like some person's like missing a lace for a sample, they got to get on a little scooter and they got to drive to the next supplier. And like, who's measuring that CO2? Like, who's measuring that? Like, nobody. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a game. Like, we won't do it, and we pride ourselves in just being honest and just being real. And like, our price points are what they are because we're not playing into that.
And I think this is a perfect time to. So I'm a big believer in walking the walk as well as talking the talk, and I'm all about conservation action. And pretty much everyone that's on my show is doing what they say, which is why I have them on the show. And that's why I wanted you to come on as well. So for those of us that don't know, which I will raise my hand as one, how do you make a sustainable shoe? What makes a shoe, like I can say on this box, this is a sustainable shoe and it's not greenwashing. It's truly a sustainable shoe.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think like because the word sustainable has been, used so much, I don't, to some brands, again, it is greenwashing for some companies, and that's why they upcharge so much. And that's an easy telltale sign right there that is like, well, you're making me do this because you're saying it's sustainable, but what is it really? The way we do it at HOLO, and I can't speak for everyone. I mean, the way we at HOLO Footwear do it, we are using post-consumer goods. So imagine like your scarf that you're wearing. You're done with it, ends up in the trash. You were able to, grind that, and instead of like that physical thing you have on you right now just ending up in the landfill, we're able to take that, we'll regrind it, and we'll throw that in our like outsole compound. So like now it gives that outsole some force structure, because it already has more content of recycled material. So we recycle. A lot of the stuff we're using, like our laces, are made from recycled cotton. Instead of virgin cotton that's new, everything is made from recycled. It's not a virgin product, it's recycled. So whether it's, the mesh, it's made from water bottles that were in the ocean, right? And a lot of brands will like really brag about that stuff, but it's like, yeah, well, there's so much abundance of water bottle. Like, just use the water bottles. Dude, like, stop talking about that it's supposed to be like this great thing, and they do it because it's greenwashing. But if you're doing a shoe brand, just use recycled water bottle thread. Like, the technology is there. A lot of people are doing it. There's no need to not use that. A lot of them don't use it because that tends to be a little more expensive than the stuff that's bad for the planet, because you have to go through this process of recycle, reuse, and some of it, sometimes it's not as, I would say, doesn't perform at the level that some other materials perform at, but for brands that are trying to do like lifestyle or, hiking, like there's plenty of stuff you can choose from. You don't have to just create more trash. There's plenty of trash. This planet is not going to run out of trash, like when I was, it's not going to run out of trash. When I was going through my investment round, one person was like, well, you could take trash from the United States and like send it to China so they can recycle it so you can make more shoes. And I'm like, look here, dude, China doesn't want our trash. They have plenty of trash there already. Like, so it's like this concept that, everything has to be made from a new source or a new material. Like, that doesn't have to be the case anymore. I think we have incredible technology that can recycle something, that can give it new life and shred it and like blend it and make mesh out of it, make rubber out of it, make EVA. And so, that's what we as a brand, it's sustainable because we're using post-consumer goods trash. Like that's why our foam is called honest foam, because it's just honestly made of trash. A very high content of trash, by the way. So a lot of it is from recycled consumer goods. So we that's what we at HOLO Footwear say, it makes something sustainable. Some people define it differently. Some people use, we use glue, we use water-based glue. We do the same thing. We use water-based glue. And I would say that to get into places like REI, we've had to show some certification from where the material come from, and that's like the only source that I give them. And I speak about Nordstrom and REI because you do, to be able to show and say this is a green brand or a green product, you do have to show that, and we show. I mean, all our materials come from the source that it's made from recycled material. So that's what we say is sustainable. Now, how other people do it, that's on them. But for us, it's like there's plenty of trash. We're not going to run out. People throw away clothes all the time. And so, being able to take something that's going to end up in a landfill, repurpose it. If you look at our shoes too, when I first started selling the shoes, to be honest, people were like, oh, like the outsole, like the midsole is like really bumpy. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what makes it cool. It's bumpy because it's made from trash. Like that's what recycled trash looks like. Can you make it smooth? I'm like, no, that takes away the whole purpose. The whole
That's
purpose is that people see that it's made from trash. If I spend water and energy trying to make that thing smooth, then it defeats the purpose. Like, yes, you're using recycled stuff, but you're using a bunch of water and energy to make it visibly what we have come to know as the standard of what something has to look like. I think that there's a beauty in like imperfections. Like it's perfect in a very imperfect way. Our shoes are, the midsole look bumpy, that you can feel, you can see some of the stuff that's used, just regrind. And so the consumer really connects with that, because I'm not telling them that is made from regrind materials. I mean, it is on the box and it is on the shoe tag, but there's nothing more beautiful than when someone sees it for themselves. And that's where we talk about the story. Like, why are they buying it? It's because they can see it for themselves, that it's like, this is different. Like, it's a very different looking product. And I like it, and it speaks to me. And then they pick it up, and then they say, wow, no, this is recycled canvas. So it's made from recycled cotton laces, and it's made from recycled mesh. So that's one component of why we can pride ourselves and say we're sustainable, just keeping more trash out of landfills. And, hopefully someday we'll get to a point where we can do a lot of 360 upcycle, where we can take our own shoes, regrind those, and remake them. That's obviously the dream. I do like biodegradable stuff. That's also the dream. But, we'll get there. I think for now, we're really just trying to get people to buy product that's made using stuff that's already going to end up in the trash. I think that alone is, and trying to get more people to buy it by making it accessible to price point. I think that can make somewhat of a difference instead of just a whole new thing, a whole new material. Like, it's just that you're not doing anything then.
Absolutely. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of trash experts. And one takeaway that she had that I will never forget, she's like, if you can buy the recycled product, do it. Buy it over the biodegradable one, because you are fueling an industry to, like, because your dollar really does decide what companies do. And if you buy the product that is made from recycled materials, then you are helping support that industry. And so buying recycled shoes, then that's taking all of that out of the landfill. And then once you become closed loop, that would be fantastic. And then being able to recycle your own shoes. Things do have a finite time, most items, not everything, but a lot of them do. I mean, what would be on our feet? We're not going to wear like aluminum that's like forever recyclable or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so I actually loved hearing you say that, coming from a strict hardcore conservation background, and having these opportunities to talk to these, trash experts. And that was what I believe her. She told me that, she advised me that. She's like, get the recycled products. If you can get something that's made from recycling, you are helping with this problem of trash. And so to hear that that's what you're doing, like, I was just getting like all tingly and happy inside. I was like, that is what I want to support. Yes, we can say that things are made from, sustainably grown bamboo or something like that. Which, yeah, that is great. And I don't want to knock down any products that's made with that.
Yeah.
But if something is like this is made from recycled XYZ, I'm going to know that I need to buy that product because I want to continually get items out of our trash system and
Yep.
reuse them. Like it
Yeah.
used to be until before disposables, that's what we used to do. There was no such
Yeah.
thing as throwing things away. Like you
Yeah.
just use
Yeah.
them until they pretty much fell apart, you know? Like
Yeah. 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 And it's true. Like, I think that does fuel an entire industry. I mean, at least our industry, in the footwear industry, we've made a lot of strides. Like, those are the last 10 years, a lot of cool innovation material. There's like recycled waterproof material now that you can use on your shoes. And so I think the technology is really there, where a lot of these suppliers are taking things that would end up in the landfill and waste and repurposing it. So I think if we can repurpose something, I think it's, for me personally, I think better than like growing something, waiting for it to get ready to do it. Like, I think kudos to those that can do it, and you know, that's what we looked at. But for us, it's like, you know, let's try to use as much, you know, recycle content in our product, because it's just less stuff that ends up in the landfill. And for something that will eventually, you know, I don't kid myself, it eventually end up in the landfill as well. But it's had a second life, and it's been repurposed, and it's just better, I think, personally. But I think technology is really catching up, and it's going to really fuel the future. That if you're not doing stuff with recycle, if you're like a new company, and if you're not doing it that way, like, you're just old school. I mean, you know, I look at the auto industry, to your point about you want to buy an electric car, like the fact that Ford is doing the F-150 Lightning electric.
lightning.
Think about that. Ford F-150 is the number one selling truck car in the country. And for the longest time, these guys at Ford, they were like, electric's not the way. Electric's not the way. We're not doing electric. We're all gasoline power. We're not doing electric. And here comes Elon, creates this company called Tesla, and they're starting to see that it's eating their lunch. So because now their profit's hurting and it's eating their lunch, they're like, oh my gosh, we got to do electric. We got to do electric. Now we got to do electric. It's all electric, all in, all in. It's so crazy, right? But it's like, it shouldn't have to be that way. Like, it shouldn't have to be because your profit margins are hurting, because you should just know that the consumer really cares about what they put in their bodies, like what they drive, what they wear. And so when Ford did the F-150, that's a clear sign to me that they threw in the towel, and they realized the change in the behavior of the buying of the consumer, that they can no longer compete by doing it the old way. The new way is finding ways to be more efficient. And nobody's saying that, you know, the world's going to change tomorrow, but at some point it has to start this change of, like, you know, we treated the planet like it's our dorm room for the last 300 years, and look what's happening, you know. And it's like, you can't deny it. I always talk about, you can't deny it. Like, I don't care what side of the aisle you're in. I'm not a politician. I don't really care. I just know that it's hot, and it's hot, and it doesn't snow a lot, and that's it. That's all I need to know. It's a fact. Like, I don't need beyond that. Like, I don't need more, you know. Like, I know that when I go outside in the summer, like, hot, and it wasn't that hot when I was a kid. That's all I know. So,
Are you hoping to be like a Tesla in the outdoor sustainable shoe
yeah.
industry? Is that kind of like your goal?
You know, I mean, our goal, I mean, is really to be disruptive. We want to influence other brands to play, or at least try to play in our space. We created, you know, we know there's a white space of nobody was making sustainable product attainable. And so our thing is so sustainable and attainable. And so now that we created, there's a marketplace for it, because we're seeing it from our retail partners, I'm sure that other people will play in that space. It's just going to be like, are you willing to take less margin for that to do the right thing? And so that's where the science experiment really comes to life, because I bet that they're going to have to, because the brand is growing, and then the product is beautiful, and on top of that, it's attainable. So for us, really, I mean, our goal is to just do the right thing, continue to do the right thing, create sustainable product. I don't know, to be honest with you, where it's going to be in 5-10 years, but my goal is to, my overall goal was to really wake up the industry and say, stop, you know, buying and talking to yourselves. Like, it's great that everyone in the industry talks to each other and talks about how great they are because they're trying to do one thing that's sustainable. Like, the whole thing should be sustainable. What are you talking about? Like, you shouldn't get an award because you're doing the right thing. That's nonsense. Like, you should just do it because it's the right thing to do. And so if we can influence our industry to change the narrative and how product gets made and who gets to participate in it and be more inclusive. And inclusive doesn't necessarily just mean like people of color. Inclusive mean people that don't have a lot of money. How do you do that? You know, and so for us, that's a big challenge. But we know that the industry is taking notice because we've seen our product in the right retails. We see great sell through, which means that the consumer is there. They were just being ignored for a long time. And so we're gonna be a problem that the industry is gonna have to figure out how to deal with because we're not gonna go anywhere.
I guess I don't know how to ask this next question. Like, how big are you guys? And because I have no concept of shoe brand size
Yeah,
really. But like, where would you say you guys are at? And are you growing like exponentially? Like, are you really making waves? Are you starting to see that? Or are you like? I guess, are you getting feedback from some of your former colleagues at these big shoe brands? Like, hey, Rommel, what's going on here? Like,
yeah,
we're starting to
yeah,
hear some whispers about you, like those
yeah.
kinds of things. So what influence are you starting to see maybe on the industry as a whole as people start to really fall in love with Holo?
Well, I mean, we're definitely seeing just placement. You know, our retail, for example, we know that we're getting placed in all like a lot of really premium space retailer, which is really interesting because we're an attainable shoe company, and we're selling at places like Nordstrom's and REI. We're at Macy's. We just opened Shields, which we'll be selling here in the next few months. And so when you get placement in retail, that gives a clear sign that the product is moving and there's a consumer there. So as we start to expand, not only in the US retail, but international, like Canada and Europe and Australia, for example, and we start getting good placement, then we understand that we've now created a piece of the industry that wasn't there before. And that's just a clear sign. So, I mean, we definitely want to grow smart. We want to grow slow. We don't necessarily just want to blow this out, but because we're definitely still just 3 years in, but we're noticing that the consumer and the retailers are understanding the need to make sustainable affordable to people. And I can say we're the original and we're the ones that thought of the concept. And this idea of being outside is really important. I think people used to say outdoors, right? And now I'm seeing companies that were using outdoors start using words like outside on their social media or their whatever. So that's a clear sign that they're paying attention, and we're really connected. So we know people are paying attention. We know it. We see it. People in the industry, whether it's like presidents, high level people, are telling us, they're all championing us. Though this is really cool. Like
Mhm.
super, they want to see us succeed, which is great. So it's I'm sure our competitors not necessarily, but there's people in the industry who've been doing this for a long time that are excited that we're doing this and we're disrupting an industry that's been doing business as usual. And for us, that's how we're growing. We're growing our audience, we're growing our consumer, and also growing our retail presence, which I think is a telltale sign. When accounts or retailers call you for your product, that means that they're hearing from other people that the brand is it's working.
I can only imagine how that feels, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
to have Macy's call you up, be like, hey, we would love to have your shoes in our
yeah,
store. How does that happen? And I'm
yeah.
sure those days just feel so validating and incredible. But as with every single person that comes on this show, and I always have to ask this, and I know it has to be the same for you. I mean, we've been talking about all of this incredible work. You worked for these really big companies, and now you started Holo, and as you're in big retail stores and like really disrupting an industry. But I know that some days have to be so shitty, like super shitty. Like, this sucks. I just want to go, pour my Pinot Noir and go to bed right
Yeah,
now. Like, this
yeah,
day needs to end.
yeah,
And would you be okay maybe sharing a little bit more of that,
yeah.
sharing the suck? Like, what are some of maybe the downfalls where some days you might be like, I still wish I was a designing director at Merrell or something
Yeah,
like that. Like some days I wish I didn't do this. Like,
yeah.
could you maybe talk a little bit more about that? What's the suck? How do you get through the suck?
You have to have really good people around you. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things. You have to have a really great team that understands that it sucks for everyone. I mean, I founder, of a company, but there's a lot of people that are here that are not. This is not just the Rommel Vega company. This is the UD Vega company, the Joseph Malone company, the Aaron Sander company. this is like a lot of us company, this is, everybody has such a key role to play, and the days are hard. There's some really, really hard days. So one of the things in the beginning, the really, some of the hardest thing was like fundraising was really hard in the beginning, because we had this group of incredibly talented people that have been doing this for a long time. And there were still doubts on like, well, how are you going to scale the business, and like, what's your runway, and like, oh, well, what's your burn rate? You're just kind of like, okay, cool, get all your questions, but do you care for the fact that the product is at REI or Nordstrom at all? And so, I mean, those things were really challenging, and has been challenging for us as a company, because we're not, I always joke around, we're not just some people who are sitting in the garage and say like, oh, I'm going to go start a company. Like, no, we were doing this for a very long time before we did this. This is not something that just happened yesterday. Like, we put in, the team collectively has over 70 years of experience in doing this. So it's really disheartening, I think, when they ask questions and like business as usual, because they don't value and they don't understand brand building, and they don't understand brand positioning and scalability in a different way. So those days were really tough. But we've had some really great partners along the way too. There's been a lot of people who have encouraged us to just, during the difficult times. And any young startup, some of the most difficult times is always going to be funding, and we didn't want to do crowdfunding, we're not trying to do that kind of funding. Like we've always in the beginning wanted the right investors to come in and write the checks that we needed. And they did, one of them was Elevate Capital. I always think that they're one of the best ones we have. Invest Detroit Ventures has been good to us as well. JB Capital down in Austin, Texas, they were great, because these are people who are founders who companies succeeded, some of them failed. So they understand you, they know what you're going through. And then another things, that suck is like, custom pulling over your freight that they got to check. And, it's in customs hands, and you have no say on when it's going to get released. And that product has to get to a retailer, and you're like trying to do everything possible to get that stuff to get, sent out to your retail partners. And then just like natural friction, I think, of a company or a young company like that has succeeded in its scale at the speed that we have, just making sure that we're doing the right thing, but we're also allowing ourselves to fail along the way, because that's how you learn. Like if you're just always succeeding, I don't know that you're scaling and maximizing what something could be. And then like, the mental health of the team is really important. Like we now 3 years in, we've been able to kind of pull away from the business when we need to, at least trying to a little bit more. Not letting it consume you, not letting it, just really take you over. Understand that people need time off. The days of like, oh, I'm going to start this, Bezos, how he started his company, all he did was work. Like, that's not healthy for anyone, I think, personally. And like, if your goal is to be that, that's great. You can go do that. That's not our goal. Our goal is just to make great product for people. And people have lives, they have kids, and they need time off, and they need to work remotely. I mean, most of our people work remotely. So we do care about, obviously, the team itself and how we're performing. And I think the brand reflects that. It's why we're having success. I think, despite the hard days, and I always tell the team, smooth seas don't make good sailors. But at the end of the day, like, if we're all sailing together, like, bring the waves, because I think we're going to be all right.
Oh, yes. I mean, you just got married, so I bet that felt good to take away, step away with you and your now wife. And you're telling me about this beautiful honeymoon you went to, Holbox Island, or how do you pronounce it?
Holbox in Mexico, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it was cool.
I need to go.
Yeah, you should. It's cool. It's again, that one of those things you just kind of need to step away, and we were able to do it. I mean, there were still conversations that were had about business or whatever. And she's badass, obviously. And for us to be in this together, like, it just takes a toll. It could take a toll on your relationship. It could take a toll on your friendships. So I think, the team really understands, and she understands, and I understand that it's important to just have time to, go to the gym, like, do the things you got to get done. Those things are important.
What's it like with your partner being one of your most important business partners too?
Yeah, well, she's a business partner. I mean, she's part owner, founder. She's gonna step into a role here pretty soon. So she's interesting because she also has 18 years of experience in the industry. So it's not like, she is like this not knowledgeable of what we do, So
right.
For me, it's been really great personally, because she checks me when I need to be checked.
Nice.
And she has a lot of value because she's done this too, right? So it's not like, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about because you haven't done this. But she's done this, and so She definitely has a business background. I'm more on the creative side, so we make a really great team on that sense of like she understands more of the business needs of the business, and I'm definitely more like visionary product brand. But some of our biggest challenges always been like we got to find time to turn it off and then focus on our kids or focus on ourselves and then go to the gym, spend time alone, not necessarily just talk about the business. And so I think we're getting better at that. And the beginning, obviously, that's all you could really talk about. But now I think we're getting better at it as we start to grow. But I think for the business itself, like the people and the team really respect her. And I would say like this is not some charity work. It's not because she's a woman. Like no, she's badass. She's put 18 years in this industry. And if she was working anywhere else, she'd still, she'll have a position, but I think her vision of where the brand wants to be, that's really respected here. And I think she's going to be, incredible next phase of the company as she comes in and kind of grab the brand by the horn. I say she's going to be an incredible asset. And then, the team really like her. And I think it's cool to have somebody like that as your partner and your wife. I mean, for me, I'm super lucky. So I can't really complain, She's the person that I'm always like talking about product and brand, but she gets me, that's why we're married.
Oh, congrats again.
Thanks.
When it's right, it's right. When it's perfect in all the ways. So what's next? What's next for HOLO? What is can you tell me? Are you allowed? Are you not allowed?
Yeah.
Or what's next?
No, people in the industry talk about like they like hide things, like it's like you're working on some top secret like thing.
Yeah.
No, it's just shoes. Just shoes. Chill. Like it's like, no need to have key cards access to anywhere here. Like no one here is creating like the cure for anything. It's just literally shoes and it's fashion. For us, we're expanding international, so that's really great. We're excited about that. We have some key partners. Can't really disclose who they are, but big players in the industry. I'm stepping down as CEO of the company. Yudi's coming in as CEO of the company, so that's a really big change.
Wow.
So we're going through the process of that, seeing what that looks like, and trying to just kind of obviously go through the process of like each one of us really understanding the role. And then, for us just keep growing, we want to grow smart in the right places, find the right partners. International is one of our main focus, and just keep creating really beautiful product for people responsibly. And then, keep spreading the word. I really appreciate you having us on the show and, spreading the love on HOLO. We're a small 3-year-old startup, so we're not like massive by any means of the imagination, but, we're looking to scale in Grand Rapids where we have a headquarters. And just keep trying to make a difference. I think that's definitely always top of mind, and partner with the right people. There's a cool partnership coming in the summer. I can't say, it's like my PR person is gonna be really mad at me, but there's a super cool partnership coming up this summer, which I'm really super stoked about. I think we're all really excited about that. That's gonna be big. Yeah.
Oh, how exciting. Well, I am super grateful to just be a little tiny part of your story and to share your incredible work. And if you ever need some testing in the field, I'm sure me and anyone listening would love to give your shoes a good try.
Let us know. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Some real honest feedback would be great. We won't sugarcoat it either. Yeah, it'll be honest.
Well, awesome, Rommel. So please, if anybody listening might want to learn more about HOLO or you or the company or where to get shoes or anything, could you just like spiel off how to get a hold of what it is that you do in your company and shoes and everything?
Yeah, the best way is to go to holofootwearinc.com. That's holofootwearinc.com. And then follow us on Instagram, HOLO Footwear. And then, visit your local REI, local Nordstrom's. We're in there, Macy's. And, check out articles on Forbes. We've had a few articles on Outside Magazine. So yeah, any kind of love you can give us. You don't have to just buy a pair of shoes. Follow us, add us, spread the word. I think this brand is being built, like I always say, it's being built in the field by all of us, and we're all trying to scale this thing together. Yeah, appreciate all the love, all the support, and keep on keeping on.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rommel. I cannot wait to share your story with everybody.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Brooke. Thanks for having us.
I sure had a blast recording this episode with Rommel. If you're in the market for a new pair of shoes, I highly recommend checking out HOLO to see if they fit your lifestyle and needs. I'd love to know if you buy a pair or see HOLO shoes while you're out and about. Tag Rewildology on your favorite social media app and we'll share with the whole Rewildology community. Remember, if you have a question about today's episode, please submit your question in the Rewildologist Facebook group. As always, I want to thank you for being a part of the Rewildology community. If you'd like to support the show, some zero-cost ways include subscribing to the podcast on your favorite streaming app, leaving a rating and review to boost the algorithm, which will present the podcast to more listeners, signing up for the weekly Rewildology newsletter at rewildology.com, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and following the show on your favorite social media app. If you'd like to financially support this show and help us keep these stories on the airwaves, consider making a monetary donation at rewildology.com or purchase a piece of swag to show off your Rewildology love. At least 10% of proceeds from this podcast will be donated to our conservation partners. I'd also like to send a special thanks to Focusrite for powering the podcast sound. If you'd like to see the Focusrite gear we use to record the show, head on over to rewildology.com and check out Nature Podcasting under the Resources tab. Until next time, friends, together we will rewild the planet. Hey, thanks again for listening to this episode of Rewildology. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button to never miss a future episode. Do you have a cool environmental organization, travel, story, or research that you'd like to share? Let me know at rewildology.com. Until next time, friends, together we will rewild the planet.